Section 40 of Scott's Last Expedition, Volume 1. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For further information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Bob Stretch. Scott's Last Expedition, Volume 1. The Journals of Robert Falcon Scott, arranged by Leonard Huxley. Chapter 19. The Return from the Pole. Friday, January 19th. Lunch, 8.1. Temperature, negative 22.6 degrees. Early in the march, we picked up a Norwegian cairn and our outward tracks. We followed these to the ominous black flag which had first apprised us of our predecessor's success. We've picked this flag up using the staff for our sail and are now camped about 1.5 miles further back on our tracks. So that is the last of the Norwegians for the present. The surface undulates considerably about this latitude. It was more evident today than when we were outward bound. Night camp, R2. Footnote. A number preceded by R marks the camps on the return journey. End of footnote. Height, 9,700 feet. Temperature, negative 18.5 degrees. Minimum, negative 25.6 degrees. Came along well this afternoon for 3 hours, then a rather dreary finish for the last 1.5. Weather very curious. Snow clouds, looking very dense and spoiling the light, pass overhead from the south, dropping very minute crystals. Between the showers the sun shows and the wind goes to the southwest. The fine crystals absolutely spoil the surface. We had heavy dragging during the last hour in spite of the light load and a full sail. Our old tracks are drifted up, deep in places, and toothed sastrugi have formed over them. It looks as though this sandy snow is drifted about like sand from place to place. How account for the present state of our 3-day-old tracks and the month-old ones of the Norwegians? It is warmer and pleasanter marching with the wind, but I'm not sure we don't feel the cold more when we stop and camp than we did on the outward march. We pick up our cairns easily, and ought to do so right through, I think. But of course one will be a bit anxious till the 3-degree depot is reached. Footnote. Still over 150 miles away, they had marched 7 miles on the homeward track the first afternoon, 18.5 the second day. End of footnote. I'm afraid the return journey is going to be dreadfully tiring and monotonous. Saturday, January 20th. Lunch camp. 9,810. We have come along very well this morning, although the surface was terrible bad. 9.3 miles in 5 hours, 20 minutes. This has brought us to our southern depot, and we pick up 4 days' food. We carry on 7 days from tonight with 55 miles to go to the half-degree depot made on January 10th. The same sort of weather and a little more wind, sail drawing well. Night camp, R3, 9,860. Temperature, negative 18 degrees. It was blowing quite hard and drifting when we started our afternoon march. At first, with full sail, we went along at a great rate. Then we got on to an extraordinary surface, the drifting snow lying in heaps. It clung to the ski, which could only be pushed forward with an effort. The pulling was really awful, but we went steadily on and camped a short way beyond our cairn of the 14th. I'm afraid we're in for a bad pull again tomorrow. Luckily the wind holds. I shall be very glad when Bowers gets his ski. I'm afraid he must find these long marches very trying with short legs, but he is an undefeated little sportsman. I think Oates is feeling the cold and fatigue more than the rest of us. It is blowing pretty hard tonight, but with a good march we've earned 1 good hoosh, and we're very comfortable in the tent. It is everything now to keep up a good marching pace. I trust we shall be able to do so and catch the ship. Total march, 18.5 miles. Sunday, January 21st, R4, 10,010 feet. Temperature, blizzard, negative 18 degrees to negative 11 degrees to negative 14 degrees now. Awoke to a stiff blizzard, air very thick with snow and sun very dim. Decided not to march owing to the likelihood of losing track. Expected at least a day of lay-up, but whilst at lunch there was a sudden clearance and the wind dropped to a light breeze. We got ready to march, but the gear was so iced up we did not get away until 3:45. Marched until 7:40, a terribly weary 4-hour drag. Even with helping wind, we only did 5.5 miles, 6 1/4 statute. The surf is bad, horribly bad, on New Sastrigi and decidedly rising again in elevation. We're going to have a pretty hard time this next 100 miles, I expect. If it was difficult to drag downhill over this belt, it will probably be a good deal more difficult to drag up. Luckily, the cracks are fairly distinct, though we only see our cairns when less than a mile away. 45 miles to the next depot and 6 days' food in hand. Then pick up 7 days' food, temperature -22 degrees, and 90 miles to go to the 3-degree depot. Once there, we ought to be safe, but we ought to have a day or two in hand on arrival and may have difficulty with following the tracks. However, if we can get a rating sight for our watches tomorrow, we shall be independent of the tracks at a pinch. Monday, January 22nd, 10,000 feet, temperature -21 degrees. I think about the most tiring march we've had, solid pulling the whole way, in spite of the light sledge and some little helping wind at first. Then, in the last part of the afternoon, the sun came out, and almost immediately we had the whole surface covered with soft snow. We got away sharp at 8 and marched a solid 9 hours, and thus we have covered 14.5 miles geographic. But by Jove, it has been a grind. We are just about on the 89th parallel. Tonight, Bowers got a rating sight. I'm afraid we've passed out of the wind area. We're within 2.5 miles of the 64th Camp Cairn, 30 miles from our depot, and with 5 days' food in hand. Ski boots are beginning to show signs of wear. I trust we shall have no giving out of ski or boots, since there are yet so many miles to go. I thought we were climbing today, but the barometer gives no change. Tuesday, January 23rd. Lowest minimum last night, -30 degrees. Temperature at start, -28 degrees. Lunch height, 10,100 feet. Temperature, with wind 6 to 7, -19 degrees. Little wind and heavy marching at start. Then wind increased, and we did 8.7 miles by lunch, when it was practically blowing a blizzard. The old tracks show so remarkably well that we can follow them without much difficulty. A great piece of luck. In the afternoon we had to reorganize. Could carry a whole sail. Bowers hung on to the sledge. Evans and Oates had to lengthen out. We came along at a great rate and should have got within easy march of our depot had not Wilson suddenly discovered that Evans's nose was frostbitten. It was white and hard. We thought it best to camp at 6:45. Got the tent up with some difficulty, and now pretty cozy after a good hoosh. There is no doubt Evans is a good deal run down. His fingers are badly blistered, and his nose is rather seriously congested with frequent frostbites. He is very much annoyed with himself, which is not a good sign. I think Wilson, Bowers, and I are as fit as possible under the circumstances. Oates gets cold feet. One way and another, I shall be glad to get off the summit. We're only about 13 miles from our 1.5-degree depot, and we should be there tomorrow. The weather seems to be breaking up. Pray God we have something of a track to follow to the 3-degree depot. Once we pick that up, we ought to be right. Wednesday, January 24th. Lunch temperature, -8 degrees. Things beginning to look a little serious. A strong wind at the start has developed into a full blizzard at lunch, and we've had to get into our sleeping bags. It was a bad march, but we covered 7 miles. At first Evans and then Wilson went ahead to scout for tracks. Bowers guided the sledge alone for the first hour. Then both Oates and he remained alongside it. They had a fearful time trying to make the pace between the soft patches. At 12:30 the sun coming ahead made it impossible to see the tracks further, and we had to stop. By this time the gale was at its height, and we had the dickens of a time getting up the tent, cold fingers all around. We were only 7 miles from our depot, but I made sure we should be there tonight. This is the second full gale since we left the pole. I don't like the look of it. Is the weather breaking up? If so, God help us. With a tremendous summit journey and scant food, Wilson and Bowers are my standby. I don't like the easy way in which Owens and Evans get frostbitten. Thursday, January 25th. Temperature, lunch, negative 11 degrees. Temperature, night, negative 16 degrees. Thank God we found our half-degree depot. After lying in our bags yesterday afternoon and all night, we debated breakfast. Decided to have it later and go without lunch. At the same time, the gale seemed as bad as ever, but during breakfast the sun showed and there was light enough to see the old track. It was a long and terribly cold job digging out our sledge and breaking camp, but we got through and on the march, without sail, all pulling. This was about 11, and at about 2:30, to our joy, we saw the red depot flag. We had lunch and left with 9.5 days' provisions. Still following the track, marched until 8 and covered over 5 miles, over 12 in the day. Only 89 miles, geographic, to the next depot, but it's time we cleared off this plateau. We are not without ailments. Oates suffers from a very cold foot. Evans's fingers and nose are in a bad state, and tonight Wilson is suffering tortures from his eyes. Bowers and I are the only members of the party without troubles just at present. The weather still looks unsettled, and I fear a succession of blizzards at this time of year. The wind is strong from the south, and this afternoon has been very helpful with a full sail. Needless to say, I shall sleep much better with our provision bag full again. The only real anxiety now is the finding of the 3-degree depot. The tracks seem as good as ever so far. Sometimes for 30 or 40 yards we lose them under drifts, but then they reappear quite clearly raised above the surface. If the light is good, there is not the least difficulty in following. Blizzards are our bugbear. Not only stopping our marches, but the cold, damp air takes it out of us. Bowers got another rating sight tonight. It was wonderful how he managed to observe in such a horribly cold wind. He has been on ski today, whilst Wilson walked by the sledge or pulled ahead of it. Friday, January 26th. Temperature, negative 17 degrees. Height, 9,700. Must be a high barometer. Started late, 8:50, for no reason, as I called the hands rather early. We must have fewer delays. There was a good stiff breeze and plenty of drift, but the tracks held. To our old blizzard camp of the 7th we got on well, 7 miles. But beyond the camp we found the tracks completely wiped out. We searched for some time and then marched on a short way and lunched, the weather gradually clearing, though the wind holding. Knowing there were 2 cairns at 4-mile intervals, we had little anxiety until we picked up the first far on our right. Then steering right by a stroke of fortune, and Bowers' sharp eyes caught the glimpse of the second far on the left. Evidently we had made a bad course outward at this point. There is not a sign of our tracks between these cairns, but the last, marking our night camp of the 6th, number 59, is in the belt of hard sastrugi, and I was comforted to see signs of the track reappearing as we camped. I hope to goodness we can follow it tomorrow. We marched 16 miles geographic today, but made good only 15.4. Saturday, January 27th, R10. Temperature, negative 16 degrees, lunch, negative 14.3 degrees, evening. Minimum, negative 19 degrees. Height, 9,900 feet. Barometer low? Called the hands a half hour late, but we got away in good time. The forenoon march was over the belt of storm-tossed sastrugi. It looked like a rough sea. Wilson and I pulled in front on ski, the remainder on foot. It was very tricky work following the track, which pretty constantly disappeared, and in fact only showed itself by faint signs anywhere. A foot or two of raised sledge track, a dozen yards of the trail of the sledge meter wheel, or a spatter of hard snowflakes where feet had trodden. Sometimes none of these were distinct, but one got an impression of the lines which guided. The trouble was that on the outward track one had to shape course constantly to avoid the heaviest mounds, and consequently there were many zigzags. We lost a good deal over a mile by these halts, in which we unharnessed and went on the search for signs. However, by hook or crook, we managed to stick on the old track. Came on the cairn quite suddenly, marched past it, and camped for lunch at 7 miles. In the afternoon, the sastrugi gradually diminished in size, and now we are on fairly level ground today. The obstruction practically at an end, and to our joy, the tracks showing up much plainer again. For the last 2 hours we had no difficulty at all in following them. There has been a nice, helpful southerly breeze all day, a clear sky and comparatively warm temperature. The air is dry again, so the tents and equipment are gradually losing their icy condition imposed by the blizzard conditions of the past week. Our sleeping bags are slowly but surely getting wetter, and I'm afraid that it will take a lot of this weather to put them right. However, we all sleep well enough in them, the hours allowed being now on the short side. We are slowly getting more hungry, and it would be an advantage to have a little more food, especially for lunch. If we get to the next depot in a few marches, it is now less than 60 miles and we have a full week's food, we ought to be able to open out a little, but we can't look for a real feed until we get to the pony food depot. A long way to go, and by Jove, this is tremendous labor. Sunday, January 28th. Lunch, -20 degrees. Height, night, 10,130 feet. R11, supper temperature, -18 degrees. Little wind and heavy going in the forenoon. We just ran out 8 miles in 5 hours, and added another 8 in 3 hours 40 minutes in the afternoon with a good wind and better surface. It is very difficult to say if we're going up or downhill. The barometer is quite different from outward readings. We're 43 miles from the depot, with 6 days' food in hand. We are camped opposite our lunch cairn of the 4th, only half a day's march from the point at which the last supporting party left us. 3 articles were dropped on our outward march: Oates's pipe, Bowers's fur mitts, and Evans's night boots. We picked up the boots and mitts on the track, and tonight we found the pipe lying placidly in sight on the snow. The sledge tracks were very easy to follow today. They're becoming more and more raised, giving a good line shadow, often visible half a mile ahead. If this goes on and the weather holds, we shall get our depot without trouble. I shall indeed be glad to get it on the sledge. We're getting more hungry, there is no doubt. The lunch meal is beginning to seem inadequate. We're pretty thin, especially Evans, but none of us are feeling worked out. I doubt if we could drag heavy loads, but we can keep going well with our light one. We talk of food a good deal more, and shall be glad to open out on it. Monday, January 29th, R12. Lunch temp, -23 degrees. Supper temp, -25 degrees. Height, 10,000 feet. Excellent march of 19.5 miles, 10.5 before lunch. Wind helping greatly, considerable drift. Tracks for the most part very plain. Some time before lunch we picked up the return track of the supporting party, so that there are now 3 distinct sledge impressions. We are only 24 miles from our depot. An easy day and a half. Given a fine day tomorrow, we ought to get it without difficulty. The wind and sastrugi are south-southeast and southeast. If the weather holds, we ought to do the rest of the inland ice journey in a little over a week. The surface is very much altered since we passed out. The loose snow is swept into heaps, hard and wind-tossed. The rest has a glazed appearance, the loose drifting snow no doubt acting on it, polishing it like a sandblast. The sledge, with our good wind behind, runs splendidly on it. It is all soft and sandy beneath the glaze. We are certainly getting hungrier every day. The day after tomorrow we should be able to increase allowances. It is monotonous work, but, thank God, the miles are coming fast at last. We ought not to be delayed much now with the downgrade in front of us. Tuesday, January 30th, R13, 9,860 feet. Lunch temp, -25 degrees. Supper temp, -24.5 degrees. Thank the Lord. Another fine march, 19 miles. We have passed the last cairn before the depot. The track is clear ahead, the weather fair, the wind helpful, the gradient down. With any luck, we should pick up our depot in the middle of the morning march. This is the bright side. The reverse of the medal is serious. Wilson has strained a tendon in his leg, It has given pain all day and is swollen tonight. Of course, he is full of pluck over it, but I don't like the idea of such an accident here. To add to the trouble, Evans has dislodged 2 fingernails tonight. His hands are really bad, and to my surprise, he shows signs of losing heart over it. He hasn't been cheerful since the accident. The wind shifted from southeast to south and back again all day, but luckily it keeps strong. We can get along with bad fingers, but it will be a mighty serious thing if Wilson's leg doesn't improve. Wednesday, January 31st, 9,800 feet. Lunch temperature, negative 20 degrees. Supper temperature, negative 20 degrees. The day opened fine with a fair breeze. We marched on to the depot.
Footnote: 3-degree depot. End of footnote.
Picked it up and lunched an hour later. In the afternoon, the surface became fearfully bad. The wind dropped to a light southerly air. Ill luck that this should happen just when we have only 4 men to pull. Wilson rested his leg as much as possible by walking quietly beside the sledge. The result has been good, and tonight there is much less inflammation. I hope he will be all right again soon, but it is trying to have an injured limb in the party. I see we had a very heavy surface here on our outward march. There is no doubt we are traveling over undulations, but the inequality of level does not make a great difference to our pace. It is the sandy crystals that hold us up. There has been very great alteration of the surface since we were here last. The sledge tracks stand high. This afternoon we picked up Bauer's ski.
Footnote: left on December 31st. End of footnote.
The last thing we have to find on the summit, thank heaven. Now we have only to go north, and so shall welcome strong winds. Thursday, February 1st, R15, 9,778 feet. Lunch temperature, negative 20 degrees. Supper temperature, negative 19.8 degrees. Heavy collar work most of the day. Wind light. Did 8 miles, 4 3/4 hours. Started well in the afternoon and came down a steep slope in quick time. Then the surface turned real bad. Sandy drifts, very heavy pulling. Working on past 8 p.m., we just fetched a lunch cairn of December 29 when we were only a week out from the depot.
Footnote: the Upper Glacier Depot, under Mount Darwin, where the first supporting party turned back. End of footnote.
It ought to be easy to get in with a margin, having 8 days' food in hand, full feeding. We have opened out on the 1/7 increase, and it makes a lot of difference. Wilson's leg, much better. Evans' fingers now very bad. 2 nails coming off, blisters burst. Friday, February 2nd, 9,340 feet. R16. Temperature, lunch, negative 19 degrees. Supper, negative 17 degrees. We started well on a strong southerly wind. Soon got to a steep grade when the sledge overran and upset us, one after another. We got off our ski and pulling on foot reeled off 9 miles by lunch at 1:30. Started in the afternoon on foot, going very strong. We noticed a curious circumstance toward the end of the forenoon. The tracks were drifted over, but the drifts formed sort of a causeway along which we pulled. In the afternoon we soon came to a steep slope, the same on which we exchanged sledges on December 28th. All went well till, in trying to keep the track at the same time as my feet, on a very slippery surface, I came an awful perler on my shoulder. It is horribly sore tonight, and another sick person added to our tent. 3 out of 5 injured, and the most troublesome surfaces to come. We shall be lucky if we get through without serious injury. Wilson's leg is better, but might easily get bad again, and Evans's fingers. At the bottom of the slope this afternoon we came on a confused sea of sastrugi. We lost the track. Later, on soft snow, we picked up E. Evans' return track, which we're now following. We have managed to get off 17 miles. The extra food is certainly helping us, but we're getting pretty hungry. The weather is already a trifle warmer, the altitude lower, and only 80 miles or so to Mount Darwin. It is time we were off the summit. Pray God another 4 days will see us pretty well clear of it. Our bags are getting very wet, and we ought to have more sleep. End of the first part of Chapter 19. Recording by Bob Stretch, Chula Vista, California.